How can you come into the world for no reason? Basically, there's an accidental little gibble that happens, a few billion years ago, and a universe happens, and people just tend to come from that accidentally, for no reason. And now you're going to say that some things should be done and some things shouldn't be done?
Because
you can't do it. That's why when Sam Harris was doing a lecture recently, he went into this bit on rape, and he said, the reason that there was rape is that rape at one time was probably very beneficial to the evolutionary continuation of the species, but now we don't really need that to continue our evolution. So, now it's wrong.
Well, what if some guy thinks he does still need it?
Well, the thing is, if it was ever useful for our evolutionary continuation, it's probably useful now. So then you start having people that are actually wild-eyed enough to try to apply that philosophy and say what, obviously the implication of that kind of a thought is, which is that there really is nothing good or evil about rape. It's just a mode of evolution at the time.
Well, I think what Lindsay was getting at, obviously, with Oghtness and what you're talking about is the idea that what they're saying is, you being a Christian or you living this way, you're not doing what mankind ought to be doing. But Ravi Zacharias makes a great argument. He says the idea of Oghtness can only be combined with purpose. He says, if you look at your watch and you say, oh, it's not doing what it ought to be doing, the only way you can say that is if you know what it was designed to do.
That's a heavy point.
Now, in atheistic philosophy, evolutionary naturalism, why is mankind here? Why is there a universe? Well, there is no answer to that question.
There is no design.
What is our purpose? Well, we don't have a purpose. It just is. So, well, then how are you going to say what ought to be?
Well, yeah, you can't, to put that in the briefest sort of way, you can't move from an is to an ought.
Exactly.
The fact that we are here and we are social and we are this way doesn't mean that we ought to be here, that we ought to be social, that we ought to have responsibilities. That whole thing is go ahead. Sorry.
So, Lane, when you hear things like this, what are some of the views that atheists have come up with where they tried to justify good and evil, right and wrong?
Sort like the thing that comes to mind immediately is the great Bonson-Stein debate, where he used it in terms of logic, but if you use it in terms of morality, they really don't have, they always try to say, okay, this is wrong, but they can never make a valid argument for where they get that definition wrong.
Yeah,
There's just so much subjectivity to what they say. They cannot account for an objective.
Okay, when
definition.
we get back, we're going to go into that deeper because we're personal beings and all of our experiences are personal. Our ultimate understanding of ourselves has to come from something that actually can produce or give a context for or an interpretation of personality that makes human life make sense. But if all people are doing is arguing that personality is accidental and it doesn't have any meaning, there's no right and wrong, there's no good and evil, there's ultimately no reason for truth, you can't then argue that we should have truth or that we should believe this or that or that it's the good thing